37,000 Russian soldiers cut off. Not by a siege, not by a frontal assault, but by something far more subtle and devastating. Ukraine has systematically destroyed every supply line feeding Crimea from the Russian mainland. The Kerch Strait Bridge damaged repeatedly, the railway ferries all disabled. Now just one road remains, the M14 Highway, and it's on fire. Here's what's happening. Since 2014, when Putin seized Crimea, Russia has treated the peninsula as an unsinkable aircraft carrier. It poured troops, weapons, air defenses into the region. For years, that strategy worked. Multiple supply routes meant Russia could absorb losses and keep reinforcing. But Ukraine has spent the last decade learning drone warfare, and in 2026, that mastery is reshaping the entire conflict. So here's what we're going to understand together. First, how did Ukraine actually cut off 1.5 million Russians without firing a single conventional shot? Second, why is Russia's military now comparing the supply road to the killing fields of 1980s Afghanistan? And third, what happens to Crimea when the last truck stops moving? We'll get to all three. But to make sense of any of it, you need to understand one specific thing about how Russia's logistics actually work. It's not redundant. It never was. Once you lose one route, the pressure on the remaining routes becomes exponential. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Let's start with the bridge, the Kerch Strait Bridge. For years, it was Russia's main artery into Crimea, 16 kilometers of concrete and steel. Then Ukraine started hitting it. October 2022, massive explosion. Road sections collapsed into the water. July 2023, more explosions. August 2023, missile strike. June 2025, underwater attack. The bridge still stands, technically, but it doesn't function as a reliable supply line anymore. Russian commanders now treat it as a trap. Any truck crossing that bridge is a target. Any train is a death sentence waiting to happen. In May alone, traffic had to be suspended for 11 hours because Ukrainian drones were spotted in the area. 11 hours. Just the threat of drones shut down the entire crossing. So Russia pivoted. Railway ferries across the Kerch Strait, cargo ships that could move heavy equipment when the bridge was too risky. Ukraine systematically took them out, one by one. By April 2026, the final ferry, the Slavyanin, was hit so hard that flames and smoke poured from the vessel for hours. The Ukrainian military intelligence agency released the footage. That same night, Ukraine struck the Russian port of Kavkaz on the mainland. The message was unmistakable. No more water routes. No more ferries. No more shortcuts. That left Russia with one option. One, the M14 Highway, the Mariupol Highway. It stretches across southern Ukraine, linking the Russian border through occupied Donetsk, through Mariupol, through Kherson, and down into Crimea. For years, this road was relatively safe. Ukrainian drones couldn't reach it. The front lines were too far away. Russian convoys rolled down that highway constantly. Tanks, infantry vehicles, supply trucks, ammunition carriers. Thousands of vehicles every month. But in 2026, everything changed. On May 11th, Russian military bloggers started panicking. Ukrainian drones had appeared on the M14. Not just appeared, they were operating at depths of 160 to 200 kilometers behind the front lines. That's a range that shouldn't have been possible. But Ukraine had mastered long-range drone warfare. These weren't primitive quadcopters. These were precision weapons enhanced with Starlink satellite technology. They could fly deep into occupied territory, loiter over targets, and strike with devastating accuracy. Within days, the highway transformed into what one Russian blogger called an extremely alarming signal. Another compared it to Afghanistan in the 1980s. The remains of destroyed vehicles scattered along the roadside, burning fuel tankers, destroyed personnel carriers. The Azov Brigade issued a chilling statement. The First Corps of the Azov Naval Base continues to create a sanitary zone for Russian logistics. The depth of the strikes will increase. They kept their promise. Every single day, the M14 became more dangerous. Russia tried to respond. Governor Vladimir Saldo issued a decree restricting civilian traffic on the highway. but military vehicles were still allowed. The thinking was clear: reduce the number of targets, make it harder for Ukrainian drones to distinguish civilian from military. But one Kremlin-affiliated blogger immediately pointed out the flaw. Now, the drones didn't have to worry about civilian casualties. Every vehicle on the road was fair game. The Institute for the Study of War confirmed what was happening. Saldo's decision to restrict movement along the M14 highway indicates that Ukrainian strikes have made transport along this route much more dangerous and will likely affect Russian logistics along this route within occupied Ukraine. The consequences are already visible. In Sevastopol, Crimea's largest city, the governor announced fuel rationing, just 20 liters per vehicle. Unspecified logistical challenges, he said, but everyone understood. The supply line was choking, food was becoming scarce, ammunition deliveries were irregular, morale was collapsing, and Ukraine is pressing harder, not just hitting supply trucks anymore. They're systematically destroying Crimea's air defenses, S-300 systems, S-400 systems, Nebo-U radars, all being picked off one by one. Dmytro Pletenchuk, spokesman for the Ukrainian Navy, confirmed the strategy. Windows are opening up for Ukraine's drones and missiles to fly through the skies of Crimea. Russia's remaining defenses are either ineffective or there is indeed some kind of shortage. The Black Sea Fleet, which once protected the peninsula, is now hiding in port. 0 ships at sea. 0. This is the moment where it gets interesting, because Ukraine isn't just degrading Russian capabilities. Ukraine is reshaping the entire strategic picture. Aviation expert Anatoly Kropchinsky put it bluntly: Crimea has become easy to shoot at. Ukraine has achieved parity in the airspace there through unmanned systems. Parity. That's just the beginning. Ukraine doesn't want parity. Ukraine wants Crimea back. For Putin, this is catastrophic. Crimea was supposed to be his legacy, the thing that would define his presidency. He seized it in 2014 with minimal resistance. Russians celebrated, families moved there, vacation resorts opened. Putin believed he'd gotten away with it, that Crimea was permanently Russian. Now, every assumption is collapsing. The supply lines are cut, the defenses are failing. The peninsula is becoming indefensible. Ukraine's strategy is becoming clear. No massive ground invasion. Not yet. That would require too many troops, too many resources. It would open gaps elsewhere on the front. Instead, what we're seeing is a slow, methodical strangulation. More drones over the M14, more strikes on air defenses, more pressure on every Russian asset in the region. Eventually, maybe months from now, maybe longer, it will become impossible for Russia to hold Crimea, not because Ukraine invaded, but because the region simply can't be supplied anymore, because the cost of defending it exceeds any strategic value, because the people living there will realize that even the mighty Russian army can't protect them. And here's what changes everything. If Ukraine loses Crimea, it loses the peninsula that anchors its entire southern strategy. If Ukraine wins Crimea, it reshapes the entire Black Sea region. It proves that Russia's territorial gains can be reversed. It demonstrates that Ukrainian innovation and drone mastery can overcome Russian numerical superiority. It sends a message to every other nation watching: the old rules don't apply anymore. Putin thought Crimea was his greatest victory. It's rapidly becoming his most humiliating defeat. The question now isn't whether Ukraine can take it back. The question is whether Russia will even try to hold it.